my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be talking about the Scorch Trials movie. So last year, the Maze Runner movie came out, which is clearly originally a book by James Dashner, and recently I got to see the Scorch Trials, which is the next adaptation in this movie series. So I was really planning on making a Maze Runner review when it came out, because I had just read the Maze Runner right before the movie. Really enjoyed the book, didn't enjoy the movie, so that's why I didn't make a review. I was so disappointed because in my opinion it was so inaccurate to the book, so I didn't want to make a review that was like mostly negative, and so I saw the Scorch Trials. Still very, very inaccurate, but I had more positive feelings about this movie, so I really just wanted to talk about it. Now, one thing I need to say before this movie review or movie discussion, whatever you want to call it, before the video actually starts, I am a booktuber. This is a channel that is dedicated to me talking about books. If you guys have seen any of my other movie discussions, they are all originally books. They're booked movie adaptations, okay? Got that? So as a booktuber, I like to personally base these movie discussions off of them as an adaptation, not necessarily a movie within itself. So because I feel this movie was very inaccurate to the book, that's what I'm going to be talking about. So I don't want to hear anything in the comments that are like, it's a movie adaptation, you can't expect every single detail to be the same, that's not how movie adaptations work. I don't care. While I fully appreciate this movie on its own, not as an adaptation, as a booktuber, I feel like I should be talking about the accuracy. That's what I want to make these videos about. So if you want to hear someone talk about the movie as its own movie, go watch their reviews. I'm going to be talking about it as an adaptation. I'm just sick of people telling me that I can't talk about inaccuracies when it comes to adaptations on TV or movie or whatever it is. I'm going to talk about them because I'm a booktuber and I talk about books, and these are related to books. So while that like 2-minute disclaimer is done, now we're going to start the review. So like I said, this movie is very inaccurate. In my opinion, it was way more inaccurate than the Maze Runner movie, which I felt was kind of true to the book. This one, in my opinion, is totally different. So first of all, this book, this movie even, is called The Scorch Trials. But there were no trials. The point of The Scorch Trials is that they are sent into the Scorch to reach this safe haven place as another part of the Maze Trials. It's a test by Wicked. In the movie, it's not a test by Wicked. There's no safe haven ever mentioned in this movie. Like, the entire plot of the Scorch Trials is totally changed, because that's the plot of the book. And so what's introduced is the right arm. Now, I don't remember hearing anything about the right arm in the Scorch Trials, but I did read this book a year ago, so I could be wrong about that. But as Thomas and the rest of the Gladers escape and go into the Scorch, they're trying to find the right arm, which is like this whole revolution kind of building within the Scorch. And so I definitely remember it in the books, I just don't remember it being as prominent in the Scorch Trials. So that was definitely changed. One thing I was really excited for is the opening scene when they wake up and they're in this new building and they have no idea where they are or what this place is, and they're kind of just like alone with each other and nobody's really explaining anything. Not the case. So the Scorch Trial starts right as the Maze Runner movie ends, which I did like. It's like you could basically put these movies right after one another and it could just be one long 4-hour movie because it's so consecutive. I do like that. But one thing I didn't like is that they don't meet the other groups in the very beginning of the movie. In the Scorch Trials, they're alone and they're just with each other, and then later on they find out that there are other groups. All of a sudden it's just this kind of common knowledge that there were other mazes with different people in them, and that kind of unsettled me. That was like a big thing for me when I was reading the books. I was like, oh my god, like there's more, it wasn't just them. And it's just so shoved under the rug in the movie. Like, everyone is in this cafeteria, one of the first scenes, and it's like, okay, well, like, you know, that's a big thing, they should be freaking out, but no, like, they just all kind of accept it, and I didn't like that. One thing I really, really enjoyed about this movie is the escape scene, when Thomas and the Gladers are all trying to escape and go into the Scorch because they realize that this building, I can't remember the name of the building that they're in, but it is a part of Wicked, they find out, so they're escaping to get away from it. And so that whole scene was so exhilarating. That was a good way to start off the movie. That's a change I can't accept. But they like take the gun from other people and then they take a nurse hostage so that they can show her the way out. And like, again, if you remember in the first movie, Thomas is like trying to get out of the maze before the doors close, and then again Thomas is trying to get out of the doors as they're closing on him and he slides under. And that scene was so, so great. One thing I will say about the Scorch Trials is their action scenes were so good, so well filmed, so well choreographed. I loved the action scenes in this movie. Another thing that didn't happen that was really, really big in the books is Teresa leaving. Teresa is supposed to be like, no, Wicked is good, like I can't run away from this anymore, like I'm gonna go, and so she leaves. That was a big point in the book, and she stays with them until the end, basically, until the very end of the movie. Teresa's role in this movie really changed for me, and I didn't like that because I hated her in the Scorch Trials. I think everyone hated her in the Scorch Trials book. but I don't like how they changed her and she kind of stayed with them. Like, the whole point of her being the betrayer was that she would leave them and betray them, and then that didn't happen until the very end of the movie. Another thing that was changed, but it's a change I can accept, is the crank house. So once the Gladers did escape the Scorch, they come upon what I believe to be as a mall because it has escalators and stores and stuff in it. They're basically just like scavenging for supplies so they can keep moving on, and they want to like rest there for the night. And as it turns out, there's a million cranks inside. The cranks were so awesome in this movie. They were definitely less humanoid and more like zombies, which is something I've been hearing a lot about. But I do like that change because it definitely makes it more intense. I feel like it is a little negative because they're less associated with humans and the cranks are just humans that have been affected by the Scorch. But altogether, that scene was awesome. Like, I'm going to say this for every single action scene. It was filmed so well, and I just really love the chase scenes. I wasn't expecting the cranks to be that fast, but my god, were they fast. I do feel that the lack of conversation between the cranks and Thomas was like a little not beneficial to the movie. Now, I don't know if this is totally inaccurate, but the way I envisioned the Scorch was basically like a barren wasteland. In the movie, it's much more industrialized, like a lot of buildings are still standing, and then as it happens, there are still a lot of people just roaming around being fine. I expected this a little bit differently. At the end of the Maze Runner movie, when they're leaving on the helicopter, the glider, or whatever it is, you can see the Scorch, and I was like, oh my god, this is perfect. This is exactly how I imagined it, because it was just nothing but sand. I was expecting some buildings, obviously, but there were like entire cities that were just like broken buildings, so it wasn't exactly how I imagined it. One thing that I like do not remember whatsoever is this party. I read a synopsis of the Scorch Trials book before I filmed this video just so I could be a little bit more refreshed. So it does happen in the books, but I remember watching the movie, I was like, what the fuck is going on? It was so weird and out of place. Like, I don't understand why anyone was partying, like, in this respect. Like, you're in a dystopian world, what is there to celebrate? I feel like these people had so many things they should have been dealing with in the Scorch, and instead they're just getting, like, high and drunk and partying and stuff, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how I feel about this scene. It was really out of place in my opinion. Even though it was in the book, I feel like they definitely kind of, like, fluffed it up and made it more intense in the movie than it was in the book. My absolute favorite scene of the movie is when Thomas and Brenda are being chased by those cranks in that like upside down building. It was so scary. Like, they're like climbing on all of these surfaces that are like not stable whatsoever, and like they're like running for their lives, and they're climbing, and like they're upside down, and like total defying gravity moment. But it was so cool, and then Brenda falls, and it's like, oh my god, it's like 100 feet to the ground, and then it cracks and the crank falls through. Oh my god, that was such a good scene. Oh my god, that scene was so good. I just want to watch it over and over again because that scene was so good. See, while there are some inaccuracies, that was a great scene, and that totally made up for some of the inaccuracies. Another key thing that was missing from the movie was how Eris and Teresa were supposed to team up and like bring Wicked against everyone. Well, they don't believe it's against Wicked, but like everyone else believes Wicked is against them. That didn't happen like at all. Like, that whole plot line was taken out, just like the telepathy thing. Like, it just didn't happen. But that was another big thing that happened. Like, they were specifically labeled the betrayers, which is another thing we were missing out of the movie. They didn't have all of the labels that Thomas was supposed to be betrayed by everyone else, and that Teresa was a betrayer, and like Minho was like the kidnapped or the captured or something like that. Like, everything that happened in the Scorch Trials book was planned to happen from the beginning, and that was not represented in the movie whatsoever. Teresa clearly did still betray them. I mean, if she hadn't betrayed them, they might as well just change the name to the movie, because that would have been it for me. Another thing that pisses me off is there was no Glader language in it. I think they said shank once. This really bothers me because it makes no sense, because just because they're out of the glade doesn't mean their whole vocabulary is going to change right away. That is a stupid detail that like has no reason for it to be cut out, because it's important. It doesn't make sense now. I was really disappointed because the language in the Maze Runner series was so unique, because I never heard all these words before, but like now it doesn't matter because they're never going to say it again. Like, okay. But in all honesty, this movie was pretty good. Overall, I really did enjoy this movie as its own. I know I said in the beginning that I'm not going to judge it as its own on a movie, but as a standalone movie, or as, like, if the Maze Runner series had never been actually written as a book, it was an amazing movie. But accuracy-wise, wasn't accurate. I would honestly bet every single dollar that they spent on the production of this movie that the screenwriters did not read a single page of the Scorch Trials. Like, honestly, that's how inaccurate it was. I did hear that James Dashner did have some input into the movie. I think he might have been like a co-producer or something. So if it was good enough for James Dashner, then like I can understand it. Personally, I really enjoyed the movie. The action scenes were the absolute best part of it, but altogether it was really inaccurate for me. I'm kind of nervous about the death cure because I don't see how it can get that much more inaccurate than the Scorch trials. But I didn't really love the death cure, so like I'm kind of welcoming of those changes. As an adaptation, I'd probably give the Scorch trials maybe like a 3 or a 4, but the Scorch trials on its own I'd probably give it like an 8 or a 9 because it really was a good, well-produced movie. So that's it for my review on these Scorch trials. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you guys thought of the movie because I've heard some mixed reviews and I'm just interested to see what you guys thought. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!